Did you know El Porto in Manhattan Beach has some really fun history and some quirky details that make it unlike any other neighborhood in the South Bay? Here's 10 super cool, lesser known facts about this Manhattan Beach neighborhood and one huge negative. So I'll stick around at the end and I'll show you my absolute favorite place in the whole South Bay to have a breakfast burrito that you might not even know exists. I'm a local real estate agent here, so I'll also give you an idea of what real estate prices are here currently, as well as rental info. El Porto was established back in 1911 by developer George H. Peck, who actually had a vision of making this area stand out amongst the others. He set it up with concrete sidewalks and curbs and even oiled sand streets on a 30 by 90 foot lots. Pretty modern planning for that time. So the boundaries were 38th Street to the south and 45th Street, the El Segundo border, to the north. Now Rosecrans runs east from the beach to PCH and the 405 freeway and beyond. Now the east-west streets are numbered and the alleys in between are named except for 38th Place. I don't know. Their names are all fun ones like El Porto, Kelp, Moonstone, Seaview, Shell, and Gull. And all the utilities run in the alleys and not on the numbered streets. And they become a huge eyesore as well because blocking views of the beach and the ocean, which equals more real estate value or less, depending on the wires. So in a recent innovation aimed at improving the area's look, residents voted in 2019 to underwrite having all of its utilities buried underground. And that's currently underway. And there's always pushback to undergrounding, you know, because it costs money. But as a real estate agent, the cost is way less than the gain of having more ocean views and cleaner streets and higher real estate values. Plus, there's no chance of a down power pole starting a fire. And here's a huge kicker. Despite this development, starting in 1911, it remained unincorporated for 70 years as an island with no city services.
Welcome to the off-the-grid, unincorporated settlement.
They call it the Wild West.
Cowboy, hey!
In the early years because the closest LA Sheriff office was 30 minutes that way.
While starting their engines 30 minutes.
That all started the change in 1980 when El Porto was being annexed by
Manhattan Beach.
But it's super weird that even though Manhattan Beach annexed it in 1980, it wasn't part of the Manhattan Beach School District until 1998. Up to that point, kids went to school in El Segundo to the north, or El Porto kids attended Manhattan Beach schools via special permits. No. Now, during Prohibition in the 1920s, El Porto had quite a reputation. It was a hotbed for speakeasies and even some rum running.
But why is the rum gone?
Poncho's restaurant, which is right here, which originally served Chinese food, is rumored to have been both a speakeasy
speakeasy
and a casino. Imagine the stories these walls could tell. Whatever the law and order crowd frowned upon at the time.
Frowning.
Booze during Prohibition, raucous dancing during the early days of rock, pot in the 60s, coke in the 70s.
Let's all do one.
Could all be found in El Porto.
Where's this meeting taking place?
Porto. Children were warned to not go there, said Jan Dennis, former mayor and local historian, because of nearby Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, which made El Porto a common stopover for young pilots and flight attendants, so the area had become known as the
Devil's Triangle.
During the 60s and 70s for the lively bar scene, drug scene, and you know, beach bum culture and whatever else scene. Yet by the 1990s, it had cleaned up considerably. You might also remember this guy, George Jung, the infamous drug trafficker portrayed in the 2001 movie Blow, played by Johnny Depp. In the late 1960s, he operated out of Tonsorial Parlor, a barbershop located near 33rd Street and Highland Avenue, which became a hot spot for the South Bay's emerging drug scene. It's here that he connected with Richard Barrisle, who introduced him to drug smuggling, propelling his career from small-time marijuana dealing to major cocaine distribution with the Medellin cartel.
And if you trust him, I trust him too.
Jung's operation and his presence in the area left behind a lasting impression on the neighborhood's history. Of course, we can't talk about El Porto without mentioning the surf. Thanks to an underwater canyon just off the coast, El Porto Beach has the largest and more consistent waves than any of the neighboring breaks, even near the Manhattan Beach Pier. So during wintertime, the storm swells, they can go double overhead or even higher out here. And the break can be banging, even if Manhattan Pier is flat. If you're a surfer, you probably already have heard about it, or you've already surfed it.
You just drop in, just ride the barrel and get pitted, so pitted. Like,
there's a public metered lot right here, and it starts up there at 45th Street and Highland Avenue, and it comes down here and it goes all the way to Rosecrans. Access is not always easy, especially in the summertime and during a big giant break. Here's a fun fact. The name El Porto isn't actually correct Spanish for the port, which would be El Puerto. Instead, it's thought to come from Portuguese, where Porto means port, but it would be O Porto. We all just think that they got it wrong, and it just stuck. It's one of those quirky details that gives it its quirk.
Quirks, quirks, quirks.
Some iconic bars and restaurants like Baja Sharky's have celebrity connections. In the 60s and 70s, did you know that the Smothers Brothers and Clint Eastwood owned bars here?
Hey, who?
Mom liked you best. You lower your voice.
Mom liked you.
Plus, artists like Ike and Tina Turner were performing in the area. Kind of fun, making it a true cultural hotspot.
Back in the day. Yeah.
Now, places to go still are Poncho's, now serving Mexican fare. Fish bars great for lunch, happy hour, dinners. Now, Player's Liquor Store has always been in the picture as well as upstairs at the El Porter Surf Shop for local merch and surfing gear and expert advice. And there's several restaurants and bars just a couple of blocks south of Rosecrans in North Manhattan Beach, but that's not technically in El Porto, and so that's another video. Like what you've learned so far, hit that subscribe button, okay, please, and send this to somebody you know who will love it or hate it, I don't know. El Porto also played a role in transportation history. The Pacific Electric red cars once ran right through this neighborhood, connecting it to Los Angeles until 1940. Imagine being able to hop on a streetcar in downtown LA with 100 degrees and head down to the coast in less than an hour and be at the beach at 70 degrees and sunshine. That's fantastic. The tracks ran on the Strand and right here, but the closest stop was blocks south on Marine Avenue. Those red cars ran all the way south to Redondo Beach, stopping in all three beach cities of Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, and Redondo Beach. El Porto's tight-knit vibe is partially due to compact layout. We're talking about a neighborhood that's only about 14 blocks by 3 blocks on 30 by 90 foot lots that makes homes very close together with usually 0 yards. To make it even more dense, since Porto wasn't incorporated until 1980, most of these lots were split in half. Shockingly, we call them half lots. And a 1,300 square foot lot makes for a super dense neighborhood.
You just call me.
Gent?
It's easy to know your neighbors here. Also, the terrain is very steep here. You can see on Crest Drive, which we're going to see in a minute, there's some massive ocean views, unless your neighbor's blocking you. Speaking of Crest, it's at the top of El Porto where we are now, and it borders the Chevron oil refinery tank farm. So here's the big negative about El Porto. Yes, it's a cool community, but it does have some dangerous neighbors. The refinery is a big one. Remember George Peck, the guy who developed El Porto in 1911? Well, he owned this 1,000+ acres here, and he sold it to Standard Oil Company around 1910. And there's about 150 of these tanks on the property. Then there's the Stacks, a natural gas burning power plant, and then Hyperion sewage treatment plant, and another power plant, and then LAX. To understand why the heck here? In the early 1900s, Santa Monica and Redondo Beach were the major cities in this part of South Santa Monica Bay. And this was considered way out of town. So they decided to put a refinery and a sewage treatment plant and blah, blah, blah. So here we are. Here's a cool bit of history and tech. In the early 2000s, an artificial surfing reef called Pratt's Reef was constructed just off the El Porto coast to improve wave quality. It didn't work, and it was removed. Oh well, that just shows the dedication locals have to keeping the surf scene.
Get pitted.
The lowest price home currently in El Porto is on 38th Street. It's a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 1,838 square foot, 3-level, built in the 70s on a 1,300 square foot half lot. It's a single family home and it's listed at $3.199 million. Now the highest price for sale in El Porto currently is on the Strand and 40th Street. It's the front row. It's a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom, 3,576 square foot, 3-level house built in 2022. It's currently listed for $9,995,000. Now for lease, the lowest price lease in El Porto is on 41st Street. It's a 500 square foot furnished studio in a duplex, and it's listed for $4,000 per month. The highest price leases currently in El Porto, you have 2 options. If you want to be at the top or if you want to be at the front row. At the top of Crest, 3 blocks up from the beach, there's a 3-level, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 9,500 square foot house on a 1,300 square foot half lot. It's unfurnished and it's a year old, and it's listed for $10,750 per month. Or if you want to be in the front row, there's a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 615 square foot duplex built in the 50s, fully furnished, and it's $10,000 per month. The other elephant in the El Porto room is that the Strand prices are less here because yes, you're in the front row, but in El El Porto, you're looking over the parking lot. Remember the parking lot? You're not next to the sand like the rest of Manhattan Beach Strand houses. The parking lot does close every night at 8 p.m. sharp, so you don't have to worry about having, a lot of parking lot noise at night. So there you have it, the highs and lows of leases and what's for sale in El Porto, and everything is in between. But next up, okay, let's go to my favorite place to have a burrito and some coffee and sit in the sand. Here it is, the surf food stand. You saw it right here. They have breakfast and lunch, and they do skate and bike and board and beach and chair rentals. You sit here in the sand and you enjoy the beach. How fun is this? Today, El Porto is fully part of Manhattan Beach, but many locals still hold on to its original identity.
Hey, man. Am I driving okay?
Even though it's officially known as North Manhattan Beach by City Hall, but we still call it Porto because that name will never die. So whether you're here for the surf or the community or the history, Porto is
Totally. Bitchin'. Totally.
Say totally.
Totally.